Good morning, students. Today we are going to read and understand Chapter 1, that is The Best Christmas Present in the World, written by Michael Morpurgo. There are some dates or periods of time in the history of the world that are so significant that everyone knows and remembers them. The story will read mention one such date and event, a war between the British and the Germans in 1914. Can you guess which war was it? Do you know which event the date below refers to? 4th July 1776 was American Declaration of Independence. 17th December 1903 was Wilbur and Orville Wright made the first flight, remaining in the air for 12 seconds and covering 120 feet. 6th August 1945 is celebrated as Hiroshima Day, in which an atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima in Japan on this day. 30th January 1948 was the day when Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated. 12th April 1961 was the day when Yuri A. Gagarin became the first human to orbit the Earth, and 20th July 1969 was a day when Neil Armstrong became the first human to set foot on the moon. Introduction of this chapter. The lesson The Best Christmas Present in the World recites a Christmas story in the midst of war. It reflects upon the longing of the soldiers to reunite with their families. On the other hand, it also throws lights upon the longing of the families of these soldiers. One such wife, Connie, a 101 years old lady whose husband was a soldier in the British Army, misunderstood her visitor to be her husband, Jim, and called the so-called reunion the best Christmas present in the world. This chapter has 3 parts. Let's read and understand part 1. I spotted it in a junk shop in Bridport, a roll-top desk. The men said it was early 19th century and oak. I had wanted one, but they were far too expensive. This one was in a bad condition, the roll top in several pieces, one leg clumsily mended, scorch marks all down one side. It was going for very little money. I thought I could restore it. It would be a risk, a challenge, but I had to have it. I paid the man and brought it back to my workroom at the back of garage. I began work on it on Christmas Eve. In this paragraph, junk shop means a shop selling miscellaneous second-hand or old out of used materials. Bridport, a market town in Dorset, England. Roll-top decks means writing decks with a flexible cover sliding in curved grooves. Clumsily mended means unprofessionally repaired. Spotted it means saw it or found it. Scorch marks means burn marks. Was going for means was selling for, and restore means repair. So the story opens with the narrator present in the second-hand goods shop. He had been longing for a roll-top desk since a while but couldn't get his hands on one because they were too expensive. Finally, he saw one at the junk shop in Bridport. The seller told him that it belonged to the days of the early 19th century and was made of oak. Old as it was in poor shape. The roll top was not a single piece. One of its legs was unskillfully repaired, and it had marks on one of its sides as if it were burnt down. Because of it being old and the condition in which it was available for very cheap price. The narrator wanted to get it so badly that he believed he could restore it even though it was less likely. Thus, he bought it by paying the man in the shop and took it home. He took it to his workroom, which was at the back of his garage, and began working on it on the Christmas Eve. Next paragraph. I removed the roll top completely and pulled out the drawers. The veneer had lifted almost everywhere. It looked like water damage to me. Both fire and water had clearly taken their toll on this desk. The last drawer was stuck fast. I tried all I could to ease it out gently. In the end, I used brute force. I struck it sharply with the side of my fist, and the drawer flew open to reveal a shallow space underneath a secret drawer. There was something in there. I reached in and took out a small black tin box. Sellotaped to the top of it was a piece of lined notepaper, and written on it in shaky handwriting, Jim's last letter, received January 25, 1915. To be buried with me when the time comes. I knew as I did it that it was wrong of me to open the box, but curiosity got the better of my scruples. It usually does. Here, veneer means a thin layer of plastic or decorative wood on furniture of cheap wood. Taken their toll on means damaged. Stuck fast means shut tight. Brute force means achieved through the application of a lot of force. Sellotaped means fastened or sticked with transparent adhesive tape. Scruples means feeling that make you hesitate to do something wrong. So the desk was in a very bad condition, and it appeared to him that water and fire had clearly done enough damage. The fact that all the decorative wood or veneer was coming out made it more likely that it could be water damaged. He removed the roll top entirely and started taking out the drawers. While all the drawers came out, the last one was stuck. He tried pulling it gently, but when it didn't work, he had to use extreme force to take it out. He punched the drawer with the side of his fist only to find a space underneath it when it opened. It was a secret drawer with a black tin-like box inside of it. Fixed on its top side, there was a letter on which it was written, Jim's last letter received January 25, 1915, to be buried with me when the time comes, in shaky handwriting. He knew in his heart that it was wrong for him to open the box, but curiosity somehow got the better of him the way it generally does, and he opened it. Next paragraph. Inside the box there was an envelope. The address read Mrs. Jim Macpherson, 12 Copper Beaches, Bridport, Dorset. I took out the letter and unfolded it. It was written in pencil and dated at the top December 26, 1914. So he found an envelope inside the tin box when he opened it. There was an address written on it, It read Mrs. Jim MacPherson, 12 Copper Beeches, Bridport, Dorset. The narrator took out the letter, unfolded it, and began to read. It was written on December 26, 1914, as was mentioned on top of it with a pencil. Comprehension check. Question number 1. What did the author find in a junk shop? Answer. In the junk shop, the author found a 19th century roll-top desk made of oak. Old as it was in a poor shape. The roll-top was not in a single piece. One of its legs was unskillfully repaired, and it had marks on one of its sides as it were burned down. Second, what did he find in a secret drawer? Who do you think had put it in there? Answer. The author discovered a black colored tin box inside the secret drawer. Fixed on its top side, there was a letter on which it was written, Jim's last letter received January 25, 1915, to be buried with me when the time comes, in a shaky handwriting. It was meant for Jim's wife, Mrs. MacPherson. Thus, she must have been the one to keep it there safely. Part 2. Dearest Connie, I write to you in a much happier frame of mind because something wonderful has just happened that I must tell you about at once. We were all standing in our trenches yesterday morning, Christmas morning. It was crisp and quiet all about, as beautiful a morning as I ever seen, as cold and frosty as a Christmas morning should be. In this paragraph, frame of mind means a particular mood that influences one's attitude or behavior. Standing to means taking up positions. Trenches means long deep ditches in the ground where soldiers hide from the enemy. Crisp means cool or fresh. Frosty means very cold with frost forming on surfaces. So the letter begins with an informal and friendly salutation to someone named Connie. Jim reveals that he is writing in a very happy mood and he is about to share the details of something great that he had experienced. He tells her about the day when all of them were in their position in trenches the day before. It was Christmas Day. The weather was cool and noiseless, which made the morning, as he described, one of the beautiful mornings he had experienced. There was frost all around, just like it should be on a Christmas morning. Next paragraph. I should like to be able to tell you that we begin it. But the truth I am ashamed to say is that Fritz began it. First, someone saw a white flag waving from the trenches opposite. Then they were calling out to us from across no man's land, Happy Christmas, Tommy! Happy Christmas! When we had got over the surprise, some of us shouted back, Same to you, Fritz, same to you. I thought that would be that we all did. But then, suddenly, one of them was up there in his great coat and waving a white flag. Don't shoot, lads, someone shouted, and no one did. Then there was another Fritz up on the parapet and another, Keep your heads down. I told the men it's a trick, but it wasn't. Here, white flag means the white flag is an internationally recognized protective sign of truce request for negotiation. No man's land means disputed ground. between the front lines or trenches of two opposing armies. Fritz here is a name for German soldier. Tommy, a common English name used here to refer to British soldier. Parapet means a protective wall or earth defense along the top of a trench or other place of concealment for troops. So, in the letter, he expresses how much he wanted to tell Connie that it was the German soldier who began it. He conveys how he is feeling uncomfortable to reveal that it was the Germans who started it. He listed the series of events of how they first waved a white flag. White flag is a symbol for surrender, truce and negotiation. It is waved in order to make the other party aware of the intentions and to indicate to them to not shoot. Then he tells how they heard someone from the no man's land shout, "Happy Christmas, Tommy, Happy Christmas." They used Tommy to refer to English army as it is a common British name. Once the British army understood what was happening, they wished the Germans back. They also thought that was it, but only then they could see them on the no man's land wearing grey greatcoats, waving the white flag and shouting, telling the English army not to shoot. The army didn't shoot while one by one the Germans came out. Jim instructed his soldier to stay hidden as he suspected it to be some kind of trick, but actually it was not a trick. The fact that Jim was instructing everyone shows that he was their chief or head. Next paragraph. One of the Germans was waving a bottle above his head. "It's a Christmas day, Tommy. We have schnapps. We have sausage. We meet you?" "Yes." By this time there were dozens of them walking towards us across no man's land and not a rifle between them. Little Private Morris was the first up. "Come on, boys, what are we waiting for?" And then there was no stopping them. It was the officer. I should have stopped them there and then, I suppose, but the truth is that it never even occurred to me I should. All along their lines and ours, I could see men walking slowly towards one another, grey coats, khaki coats, meeting in the middle. And I was one of them. I was part of this. In the middle of the war, we were making peace. Here, schnapps means a German drink made from grain. So one of their men was swaying a bottle over his head at the no man's land while shouting that it's Christmas and they should celebrate. He invited the British soldiers over and told them that they have their special schnapps and sausages as well. In no time they could see a lot of Germans walking and roaming on the no man's land without their weapons. The first one to get out of the trench from the English army was Little Private Morris. Next, everyone followed, and in the words of Jim, there was no stopping them. Jim mentions how he now feels that he should have stopped them as he was their officer, but he also confesses that in that moment it did not even occur to him to stop them from celebrating for making peace. At that moment, all he could see were men in grey and khaki coats walking towards each other to meet in the center of the land. He mentions that even he was a part of this, and now they were making peace in the midst of a war between the two nations. Next paragraph. You cannot imagine, dearest Connie, my feelings as I looked into eyes of the Fritz officer who approached me, hand outstretched. Hans Wolf, he said, gripping my hand warmly and holding it. I am from Düsseldorf. I play the cello in the orchestra. Happy Christmas. Captain Jim MacPherson, I replied, and a happy Christmas to you too. I am a school teacher from Dorset in the west of England. Here, outstretched means extend, gripping means holding, cello is a musical instrument like a large violin. So he expresses how he felt in that moment is far beyond that can be expressed in words or imagined. He was overwhelmed as he looked straight in the eyes of approaching German officer who extended his hands and introduced himself. His name was Hans Wolf and he belonged to a place named Düsseldorf. He told Jim that he played cello at the orchestra and then wished him Happy Christmas. Jim wished him back and introduced himself too by telling his full name, Captain Jim MacPherson. He told the German officer that he was a school teacher in Dorset, which is in the west of England. Now we'll continue in the next lecture.